I met a number of people who were my age, had a very similar background, and they already had 2, 3 properties. And I said, if they can do it, there's no reason I can't. So, I was constantly waiting. I thought I needed to know more information before I was ready to approach an agent and ask to look at properties and this and that. But sure enough, one coffee at Panera Bread with John Bumbachi, and I was off full swing. And within a few months, I had had an offer accepted. So
you found the Real Estate Law Podcast, because real estate is more than just pretty pictures, and law goes well beyond the paperwork and courtroom arguments. If you're a real estate professional or looking to build real estate expertise, then welcome to the conversation and discover more at realestatelawpodcast.com.
Welcome to the Real Estate Law Podcast. And once again, I'm your host, Jason Muth, and we are here this week with attorney broker from Next Home Titletown Real Estate and Urban Village Legal, Rory Gill.
Hey, Jason.
Hello. Hey. And we have a special guest on this episode. We got Matt Davis here, and Matt has an amazing story for someone just getting started in his real estate career. And we can't wait to get going and learning more about some of the work that he's been doing with his personal investments. Matt, how are you?
Great. Thanks, Jason, for having me on. I'm looking forward to this.
Our pleasure. We were, we should say kind of how we came to inviting you onto the podcast. I was on a podcast that you've also appeared on, which was Kyle Curtin's podcast. And we invited him on the podcast. He's going to come on in a future episode. But when I asked him who past guests he's had that we should have, you're the first name that came up. So got some big shoes to fill right there. You've built up a little bit.
Yeah, we had a great conversation that day, and it was a good time. So.
Yeah, I listened to a lot of it, and it is a great story. I can't wait to get into that story for what we have here on the Real Estate Law Podcast. So Matt, tell us a little bit about where you're from, what your background is, how you kind of got into real estate investing from, what you were learning in school, because you're a recent college graduate as well, but you are now a seasoned pro in investing in real estate.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I can give my background story. I grew up in Massachusetts and ended up going to college for mechanical engineering out at Purdue University, which is in Indiana. For those of you who don't know it, it was a great experience. I loved it out there, had a wonderful time, learned a lot about engineering, about life, about, being analytical and working hard. And while I was out there, I kind of developed this passion on the side of real estate, and I became really interested in it. And I was ambitious. I wanted to do well. So I eventually got hooked on it from a few books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad being one of them. I got hooked on podcasts, started listening to them on my walk to class, my walk back. And it really became, a passion, a side hustle of mine to try to, develop these skills that when I graduated, I started making money. My life kind of started as an adult. I was ready to hit the ground running and, start a business with some investing. So that's exactly what happened. I graduated, I got settled over the course of a few months. And I was looking at properties and searching Zillow and doing stuff on my own. And then I realized, hey, I got to get out there. I got to start meeting people. So one day I started going to some meetups, and I ended up at a meetup up in Lowell, which is where I met a lot of local investors. And it was kind of my first time really getting, meeting other people who had the same interests and passions that I did. A lot of them were in a very similar place. A lot of them were 10 steps ahead of me and everywhere in between. So
let me just jump in there also with the meetup. We should say it was the Pints and Properties, right? That you went to in Lowell. Yeah. And I've not been to that one yet, but I've spoken with Jonathan who runs it.
Yeah, John Bumbachi.
Yep, super nice guy. Can't wait to get to one of those meetups at some point in the future. But what gave you the courage to go? I mean, I think that's actually pretty remarkable when you graduated college, within the past 5 years or so?
Yeah.
Yeah. Someone coming out of school, it's been a long time since I've been in college, but, I know that those first couple of years after school, you're looking to find your way, right? You find your people, find your niche, both in work and life, personal, social. Did you show up at that meetup on your own?
Yeah, I showed up on my own. So basically in those few months when I got back and I was getting settled, getting myself my own apartment, I found a job, rebuilding a network around here because a lot of my friends were still out in the Midwest. And then I had this interest in real estate, and I was always learning, but I wasn't really making any, real progress. Nothing nothing new was happening other than every day I listened to another podcast or something. And so, I was building up this background of knowledge, but I wasn't putting it to work. And pretty much immediately after going to that first meetup, I started seeing, progress. I was actually looking at properties. I was going to see properties. I was, working alongside an agent or multiple agents talking about deals. And I learned more in those 3 months following going to that meetup than I did in the 3 years of reading books that led up to it.
It's crazy. It's like I speak to a lot of people at my university. Like I've done alumni things throughout the years, like mentoring programs and whatnot. And I always talk about networking because they never really taught us that in school. And again, this is a couple decades ago. I graduated back in the 90s. And maybe things are a little bit different right now, but networking is super valuable. I know Rory and I have been, we host a meetup also. You'll have to come to it. Once the mask mandate comes off in Boston because it's back up here. But ours is called Network to Grow Your Net Worth. And it's a cool little event. People at a bar, very similar to Pints and Properties, not overwhelming conversations flow throughout the night, probably similar to what you're going to. But, it makes it real, right? Like you're at the meetup and you just said it, like now, next thing you know, you're looking at properties, you're talking to people, you're having real conversations with people in the space. It takes it away from the theoretical.
Yeah. And it was, I met a number of people who were my age, had a very similar background, and, they already had 2-3 properties. And I said, if they can do it, there's no reason I can't. So, I was constantly waiting. I thought I needed to know more information before I was ready to approach an agent and ask to look at properties and this and that. But sure enough, one coffee at Panera Bread with John Bambachi and I was off full swing. And within a few months, I had had an offer accepted. So.
Yeah, I listened to the story about how you brought a presentation to that, and then get into that about your the deal that you have people in your network that have invested in, and how you did that. But people appreciate being buttoned up like that. I mean, if he's not used to people showing up with a presentation, like you stood out, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Rory and I have been to a number of real estate meetups before the pandemic and then since pandemic. And I mean, Rory, what do you think about the value of networking at events like that?
I think you see when you go to the events, it makes it real, but you also can see like the wide range of experiences that are out there. In a good mixed event, you'll see a couple of people who might actually be a couple of steps behind you and are just, gaining the knowledge to even get started. You might find people who are exactly in the same situation as you, a couple of people who are a couple of steps ahead of you, and then a couple of people that you might want, to aspire to for their, for all the work that they've done. And it's a good, healthy mix, and it makes it real. It doesn't sugarcoat the process or try to, to sell the real estate lifestyle, but it really makes it real and allows you to translate kind of all that noise. That's great, but you can take a couple steps forward and connect with who you have to connect with.
One thing I found at real estate meetups is that the people that show up are the ones who actually want to network. Like they're not going to show up and then not give you time, right?
Exactly.
Like
everyone's so friendly. You're not usually around people that are, that ready to just engage and start telling you about their life. But
I've also found everyone likes to talk about themselves and talk about what they're up to, right?
Absolutely.
The ones that don't show up to the meetups are the ones that don't give the calls back, right? Maybe they're too busy or it's just not their thing, but the people that do show, they absolutely want to engage. Like we want to engage whenever we show up at events like that. And I think it does lead to great conversations and relationships and building networks and deals. I mean, we've done deals with people that we've met at real estate networking events. Rory's hired agents that he's met at real estate networking events. You have done deals with them, or what have you done at that? Like, what was the outcome of that event? You talked to having coffee with John.
Yeah. So what happened was I had this coffee with John. And as you mentioned, I brought a presentation to this coffee meetup, and basically, I was telling him about who I was, what I was looking for, explained to him the BRRRR strategy as if he didn't already know what it was. And, I give him my personal financials so he's an agent. He wants to make sure see what I was able to do easily. And I told him about different people in my network who I might be able to raise money from. And so he got a feel from that I was serious and that I was ready to go. And that's why, eventually he brought me a really good off-market deal. Something that he came across from his network. It filtered down to me. He knew that, it was pretty much exactly the kind of thing I was looking for. And so, we just hit the ground running, put in the offer. It took forever to get accepted. It was kind of a really slow, drawn out closing process because it was, off market. It was something we purchased from from the City of Lowell. It was, a little bit unconventional, but it ended up being a 15-month closing process because, we got the offer accepted, and then there was just a whole bunch of, attorneys not responding to other attorneys and waiting on things to go all the way up the bureaucracy of the government and get approved by HUD and DC and this and that. But eventually, we got to the closing table, and leading up to that, when I made this offer, I didn't have enough money to pay the down payment. I knew I was going to need 20%. They ended up changing it halfway through the 25 as soon as COVID hit for the down payment. I needed to raise, almost $140,000. And, I think I was really well positioned to do that because I had a lot of people in my network who had been listening to me for 4 years talk about real estate. And I had been priming them the whole way. I mean, I've been saying, hey, I'm looking at real estate. This is why I'm interested in it. And these are, family, friends, loved ones. So they were happy to listen to what I was trying to do. And I was really just going to them at first for support. And I said, hey, yeah, maybe someday we would partner on something. This is what it would look like. And this was all before I even put in, an offer. So that when I had something that was a good deal, I brought it to these people and said, hey, I found this deal, great numbers, everything works. Do you want to partner on it? Do you want to go in together? I'll run the whole show. I'll do all the work. I'll let you be as involved or not involved as you want to be. And sure enough, I was able to come up with that money compared with some of my own savings, and we were able to take it down. So it's been going smooth ever from there.
So you primed them for 4 years. That is a long, that is a long story of telling real estate tales until finally it pays off. But
I was telling them about, at first I was just always talking about how I wanted to do real estate. And then, right when I got serious about it and I started going to meetups, right around the same time, I was also asking these family members, hey, let's sit down for a coffee, at a local, Panera Bread or whatever. And I'm going to teach you how this business works. And everyone wants to, be an investor. So people listen to that.
Everyone's got money to invest these days. Just the deals are hard to find.
Very true.
And then, when people invest in you, they're investing in you. I mean, they're investing in the deal, but I don't think you would have been able to raise that money if it wasn't the relationship that you'd built with them.
Yeah. And if they didn't they saw it in me as an obsession, basically.
Sounds that way.
Because it's what I was talking about. So they knew that I wasn't, this wasn't some, oh, that's cool, I'm going to go do that. And then, change my mind and go looking at Bitcoin the next week.
Right.
They knew that I was focused on this. They saw that.
Right. Okay. So it wasn't the flavor of the month, and you just been talking about it, built up a lot of knowledge, and then finally went in there for the pitch. Like it's a long, what's the strategy, Rory? Like jab, 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 right hook. You heard about that?
Jab, 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 right hook. Yes. That you prime people over a long period of time so that when the time comes for you to ask for something, you can do it and they already know, like, and trust you.
Whenever I meet someone that I meet at a meetup for a coffee or whatever, I always jump into conversations like, what are you good at? What do I like? What am I good at? Hey, maybe this is the kind of thing that, who knows, maybe we could partner on someday. And that's a really important conversation to have because you start to notice people who have complementary skill sets, and you can build that kind of relationship that, someday when a good deal comes, everyone wants to be a part of it. So,
yeah. I still hear from people that we met at meetups back before the pandemic. I just heard from somebody recently about, hey, do you want to partner in this specific deal? And we're like, Rory and we're a little overcommitted right now. Like we just closed on something last week. And I mentioned to you before we started recording that we do a couple Airbnbs ourselves. So we manage short-term rentals kind of as our side thing. So we're doing another one. And then I think I might have another one coming online shortly thereafter. So, we're scaling, but not quite at the level or the speed in which someone like you or other people want to, but it's what works for us in our lives. So tell us about the deal. And Rory, a 15-month close period and attorneys not talking to each other. Would you like to comment for the profession?
When I hear the story there, and I'm going to hear a little bit more, I'm sure now, but we have a city involved, we have federal government entities involved. I'm not surprised at kind of the 15-month turnaround time. It's been a while since I've seen a transaction drag on that long, but it does happen. And if you have multiple entities involved, it's not a priority for any one place, or any one place can hold things up.
So what's the deal that we're all referencing? It's a 6 unit. Is that right? that the City of Lowell sold to you?
Yeah. So I'll go into some of the details about it, the technical stuff. So the City of Lowell was selling this property. It was publicly listed on their website. Most people didn't know it was there. It was through the Housing Authority. The people who did know about it weren't telling everybody because they were good deals, and they wanted to tell the people that were close to them in their network and use it as a relationship building thing. So I found out about it through word of mouth, directly from John Bombachi actually, and put in an offer. It was a very unique process. It was more of you had to put in a proposal. I had to talk about what I was planning on doing with it. They really cared about the fact that I was going to keep it as affordable housing and allow the people that live there to stay. They had a different objective than you would normally see from a private sale. Reason being, they cared more about the people. I mean, it's a social program. They care more about the people than they did about the money, and so they weren't asking top dollar. They weren't trying to get the highest bid. They cared. They were actually assigning points based off this point system for who would get the bid, and only a smaller portion of that was actually the price. So yeah, so we got the offer accepted, long drawn out closing with lots of approvals, and then we hit the closing, and we had there's 6 units. They're all 3 and 4 bedrooms, so there's a lot of bedrooms in the building. Had pretty good gross potential rents. The city switched all the people that were public housing into Section 8, so reevaluated all the rents, brought them up to fair market rent, which was in Lowell is pretty close to private sale market rent. From that point, we leased up a couple of other units. It took a little while. It was a little challenging actually, but we did a lot of just basic cosmetic rehab. Painting the stairwells and cleaning was the biggest thing. And everything was intact and sturdy, but they just did the minimum to keep it safe. They didn't really try to make it look pretty or try to get the best rent for it. So there was a lot of room for improvement there. And we got it operating over the course of a few months. Me and my partners did a lot of the legwork myself. I spent some late nights there painting on my own. Learned a couple lessons about in the future I'm going to hire out the painting. For now, it was a good learning experience. And yeah, it's been a home run basically. And it's all because I put myself in the position to be offered a good opportunity, because I was going to these meetups, because I was networking with people, because I had all my ducks in a row. The lucky deal came to me. So
yeah. So the city website, maybe it's a secret now, but it's going to get out there. That's a rich source for property owned by municipalities.
Yeah. If I thought it was going to keep happening, I wouldn't have just said that. I think it was a one-time thing, but always, keep your network open and always be looking, and you never know when you'll find out. It was listed on the same procurement opportunity page where they put out bids for who's going to, repair roofs for the Housing Authority. And all of a sudden one showed up, and it wasn't a roof repair or a kitchen remodel. It was, private sale of 13 buildings. And there you go.
So did you negotiate the price? Like, did you offer a price below what they were asking? And then I know that you mentioned that there were other criteria beyond just the price, but who was the approver? Like, was there a board of directors or a selectman or something that had to approve it?
Yeah. So there was an approval process. It was basically a point-based system. Someone won based off the point-based system. And then they had a regularly scheduled meeting with the Housing Authority. They do that thing. They do something every month, and they all just gave the official approval, and then we were notified.
Did you say you're from Lowell, or you're from the area?
I'm from Westford, which is close to Lowell. Yeah. So that's basically the whole process and how it worked. And then we've been operating it. We brought it all up, got some real financials behind us, because there was pretty much no financials when we bought it, since it was publicly funded. And we're in the process of a refinance right now and expecting that to close in the next couple of weeks.
Wow. Rory, what were you going to say?
No, I was going to ask, you talked about a point-based system. What are some of the things that made your application stand out and get awarded the most points by the Lowell Housing Authority?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of them was price, but it wasn't a huge portion of it. And so they started the bids at $660,000. I knew that there weren't a lot of people in the prep meeting, and I knew there weren't a lot of people that knew about it. So I offered $665,000, and that was enough. And then they were also, they assigned a lot of points to if you're willing to sign a use restriction deed rider that said that you'd allow the existing residents to remain there as long as they maintained a Section 8 voucher and didn't violate the lease. So we were willing to sign that. It was basically just like a 5-year lease. So it wasn't a problem for us. The only other person who bid on it didn't want to do that. And that's why, that made the difference of who it came to, the property. They also looked at experience. I didn't have any experience. This was my first deal, but I was buying it under an LLC. I have a really good network. And so when in the experience section, I said, this is my team. This is John Bambacci. This is all the stuff he's done. This is, my uncle is a CPA. I said, this is my uncle. He's my CPA on my team. Here's his bio. Here's my other uncle who's a hard money lender and has some other real estate experience. Here's his bio. And so I put these people in there who, really are my mentors and my advisors. And even though they didn't own a piece of the company, they weren't my team. And so then, I had the experience. And so I was able to, and I used that same strategy actually when talking to banks. I said, yeah, I haven't bought a property before, but my team has all the skill sets that are needed. Here they are.
That's one of the most direct ways I've ever heard of somebody, quite literally leveraging their network and using that as a tool.
Yeah. I mean, not to be cliche, but what do they say? Like the only balls you don't hit are the ones you don't swing at. And, if you don't ask, the answer is literally always going to be no. But if you ask, the answer could be yes. Even if it's yes 10% of the time, that can make a big difference. I don't know if was this the only property that you kind of put an offer in on, or were you out there pounding the pavement doing, 15 offers and getting nothing?
Yeah. So I had put in offers on a couple other properties, but, none of them, it's hard to find properties that the numbers work where, you're going to be able to get financing, no problem. Because, the banks have their own underwriting criteria, and even meeting those can be tough. And so, I looked at a few properties in person, but I was analyzing properties on the MLS, day in and day out. And I was pulling very basic financial numbers, just kind of ranking them. And my goal there was to just get an idea of what's normal so that if something was a good deal, it would stand out. So if you look at bad deals all day long, you're more ready to recognize the good one. And so I still use that strategy. I'm hunting for a next deal right now. And I'm underwriting properties that I know right away aren't going to work, just because I want to get that experience and look at more of them and be able to compare what's normal and what works.
Yeah. That's great practice. I mean, you need it. It's just like working out or practicing before a big game. I mean, you need to take those reps and get the experience under your belt so you know how to identify a good one and then jump at it.
Yeah.
I bet you were analyzing deals for years, like along with your 4 years of listening to podcasts and reading books and telling people all about real estate, right?
Oh, absolutely. it.
So Rory had a couple questions about like the legal process along the way and maybe some things that you might have learned.
All the occupants are Section 8 tenants. Is that right?
They were when we purchased it, but since we've leased some of the empty units to, regular market residents.
I mean, do you have any advice or experiences with working with the Housing Authority and Section 8 vouchers that other new landlords should know?
Yeah, I mean, I have all good things to say about the Lowell Housing Authority in particular. It's very apparent that they care about their people. And it's also very apparent that, they want to be fair. They understand, directly out of the words of one of my contacts, out of the words of his mouth, he said, we understand you're running a business and you need to make a profit. When we were negotiating, what the rent would be for the Section 8. And so they understand and they want to, mediate a good relationship between the landlord and the tenant. So communicate with them. They have great contacts. There's people whose job it is. And most people who work there actually care about what they're doing.
That's good advice and good to hear. And then, so it sounds like you've actually switched over and turned over a few units to new tenants since you've been in. How did you go about choosing your tenants or screening your tenants?
Yeah, so the tenant screening process that we used, we actually I went to a local, actually John Bambacci has a management company and he has a property manager that works for him. Her name's Carla. She does a fantastic job. We hired her to do the leasing. I still had to do the approval though. So she did, I work a full-time job. I didn't have time to, go and doing showings and all that, but she brought me any half decent applications and we looked at them. But, the biggest takeaways that I would recommend are, run your credit checks and your credit reports. That's important. You can do income verification that way too, which can, at least give you an idea if people are telling the truth or not on their applications. I didn't actually call references or past landlords. I probably should have, but the couple of, people who stood out that I ended up approving their applications, I felt good about going in. So I didn't feel the need to do that. And the only other thing is, don't rely on like criminal background checks to see if someone has, a good background or if there's problems. In my opinion, you're much better off just Googling their name and using quotes and Googling their name and the city and their name and the address. I had someone who came up, perfectly clean background, and then there was some articles that weren't so great in the, in the newspaper, and other, imperfections and financial stuff that just made it not work out. But you can get a good idea from lots of sources, but Google is your friend.
Mm-hmm. Good. And, social media too. You can learn so much from what people are, voluntarily putting out online.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And so, this is a larger project. So you didn't finance this, the traditional way with a residential lender. How was your experience, especially in your first deal, going to a commercial lender?
So the experience was pretty positive. I was initially introduced by someone who had done deals with this particular lender. And if you put together, what I did is I put together a really clean PDF package that, had all the information on the property, all the stuff that they're going to ask you. I had it all ready to go. And so when I was reaching out to lenders, I just sent them this package and it answered all their questions. It basically was the loan application. I still had to do the loan application, but all the information they already had before they even sent me the application. It had personal financial information. It had all the details on the property, rent rolls, P&Ls. And so that, I think, really demonstrated that I understood the process. I was more experienced than, my resume would suggest, because I had, this breadth of knowledge from my own education.
A lot of PowerPoint skills. I might have to employ you for that.
Yeah, for sure.
And I guess the last thing I wanted to ask, since you seem to be, very well organized with the process, is how did you structure the deal with your co-investors? It sounds like you have an LLC, but how did you go about putting together the structure that allowed you to bring in other partners?
Yeah, so I had initially reached out to an attorney and said, hey, can you write an operating agreement? And he said yes and asked a bunch of questions, but I knew in my head how I wanted to structure it. And so I ended up just getting a template and diving in and playing lawyer. But I felt comfortable doing that because my partners were family. And I wasn't worried about protecting myself legally as much as I was concerned about, having a clear explanation of how things will work, how the money will flow. And the way we structured it was basically I offered them a preferred return. I offered them basically a percentage of ownership based off of the total funds needed to close and how much they contributed. So, for example, if it's $1 million property, if they pitched in $100,000, they own 10%. And it was a little unique because I ended up being able to, only put in less than half the cash and walk away with 85% of the equity. But, it worked because preferred return and the way it was all being calculated made it so that the numbers look great for everybody. Do I know, is it perfectly compliant with everything legally? I don't know, because I never had a lawyer review it. But, it got the good deal exception and the family exception to really having to, work out all those details.
Oh, congrats. That's perhaps there's some legalese things that need to be taken care of in there, but primary purpose, I think, for the LLC operating agreement is to make sure that everybody is on the same page. If you accomplish that, you accomplish the most important thing.
Yeah, I agree.
When did this deal close?
This closed in January of this year.
Okay. So it's been 8-9 months at this point. How do your investors feel about what they've seen in that period of time since closing?
They feel great, other than the fact that I'm constantly talking to them about it. I don't know how hands-on they wanted to be, but
Matt, you might not get invited to Thanksgiving, if you just keep pounding them on it.
It's true. It's okay. They know. about my passion. But yeah, so it works out for all of us, and they all feel great about it, and the numbers are working, and the refinance is going to give them, a third of their initial investment back, less than a year in. So, everyone's happy.
And they're going to maintain their ownership stakes along with the refinance?
Yeah, the way we structured it, they maintain their percentage ownership forever. And I wanted it to be that way. I wanted them to be a part of the deal, for as long as we own it, because I wanted them to get hooked on, this is a good deal. I wanted them to get hooked on the cash flow, get hooked on, the checks in the mail, because they're going to be all that more enticed to, put some more money together for the next one when it comes along.
So it sounds like you will get invited to future holidays, like assuming that this is going very well.
Yeah, I think so.
That's awesome. That's such an interesting story. I think that there's a lot of this opportunity out there for people that want to put in the legwork and want to find the investors like you have. I mean, it does help having a supportive and good relationship, especially if they're family members. But, Rory certainly has worked with plenty of families along the way that are bitter rivals, and, it kind of doesn't end well, like if it's not done properly up front, or they stumble their way into real estate that they inherit and it just gets messy. So anyway, I want to start to head toward our final wrap up. And then after that, we'll, give all your information for people that want to reach out to you, and we'll put everything in the show notes as well. But we do like to ask the same questions of everybody who's been on the podcast. And I will, I mentioned these questions earlier to you today. So if you still need some time to think, I'll certainly talk. But our first question is, if you had to speak on one subject for 30 minutes, obviously we know it's going to be real estate because you've talked about it for 4 years, right? But not real estate. If you had to speak on one subject for 30 minutes with zero preparation, like get up on stage and just start talking about something that, you just happen to know a lot about, like what would that be?
Yeah, I think what it would definitely be is, fitness, going to the gym, health, caring for your body, caring for yourself, mm-hmm. because that's what's going to give you the energy to be successful and have progress in your life. And so I think, that's one of the most important things in my life. Going to the gym on a regular basis gives me so much more energy. After a workout, I accomplish more in my real estate stuff than, any other time. And so it would probably be related to that.
That's an excellent answer. Taking care of yourself is very important. Do you listen to real estate podcasts while you're working out, or do you just do like high intensity classes where you can't have headphones on? So
I work out on my own. I just have a gym membership. I lift weights. That's typically what I do. I usually listen to music. I actually, it's funny you asked that, because for the first time ever, I said, I'm going to try doing a podcast while working out. And I always thought that the music was helping motivate me, but I think I had a better workout listening to a podcast than
no way
in a while. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Our podcast time is like on long drives. Like, when you're like on a highway and you don't really have to think about where you're going, you can just kind of focus on the conversation. I've tried some podcasts while working out, but yeah, music's what I listen to. But hey, you might find that, your workout time is actually now your learning time as well.
Yeah, multitasking is good if you can pull it off.
Yeah. So our second question is, tell us something that happened early on in your life or your career or in school that impacted the way that you're working today.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was recognizing early on in, basically when I was in high school, my strengths and the fact that I was good with numbers and good with analytics, and, math and science was always my strong suit. It's what led me into engineering school, and being able to recognize those strengths and run with them, I think, impacted where I'm going.
Right. That's excellent. Number 3, what are you watching, reading, or listening to these days? It could be anything. It could be something ridiculous. It could be a podcast. It could be classical music. It could be, you name it.
Yeah. So for the most part, it's podcasts. When I listen to music, it's just to keep me, the rhythm and stuff. But what I really enjoy is real estate podcasts. And it's where I spend, most of my time listening. I'm not a huge TV person. Every once in a while, if there's something on in the background, kind of like a side thing that I enjoy doing is cooking and making food. It's kind of related to health and fitness stuff, cooking good food, healthy food, eating well. And so sometimes I'll throw on a Netflix, cooking related show or something like that. Mm-hmm. And more as background than anything. But
what's for dinner tonight?
I'm going out.
Going out.
Yeah. It's Friday.
Yeah. All right, cool. And what real estate podcast do you listen to? I mean, there might be ones that other people already listen to that listen to this one, but it's always worth mentioning, what's on your playlist right now.
Yeah. One of my favorites is Wheelbarrow Profits, Jake and Gino Barbaro, multifamily guys. They have, different versions of their podcast that they all put out together. Some they talk about personal finance, some commercial real estate. Sometimes it's, they have different edition family stuff, but I think their real estate content is underrated and should be more popular than it is. And the other one I actually kind of like, it's called the Real Estate CPA Podcast. Learn a lot about how the money works and how the taxes work and how the structure works. And that interests me. And so Real Estate CPA Podcast is another one of my favorites. I always listen to that first when it's out.
Did you ever think 7 years ago that you'd be into CPA podcasts in your 20s and that's your entertainment?
No, I'm a little ashamed of it, but also proud of it.
Well, be proud of it. Keep on doing what you're doing. It sounds like you're well on your way. I mean, you obviously have an amazing story that you shared with us today. We really do appreciate that. And I know that you're out there looking for your next deal, and we're going to have you back when you have that next deal. We didn't even talk about your house hack right now. But that'll be for another conversation as well. But, I really appreciate your coming on the podcast today. Matt, how do people find you if you want to be found?
Yeah. So first off, thank you guys a ton for having me on, because, it's always great having a platform out there and being, getting your name out in front of people. It's going to be a huge thing. So it's awesome what you guys are doing. Really appreciate being a part of it. I'm starting to build up a little bit of social media or trying to get a little more focused on it. So I have Instagram is one of the better ways to reach me. Matt Davis Real Estate, all one word. You can find me there. You can also, give me a call, 978-677-8366. Call, text. I love meeting up with new people, and whether we arrange to meet at a meetup or you want to grab a coffee, always looking to network more. So
awesome. Well, thank you, Matt, again for appearing on the Real Estate Law Podcast. And Rory, thanks again for you being here as well. Rory, where can people find you?
Easy to find on any platform, but we're at nexthometitletown.com or urbanvillagelegal.com.
Yep. I don't really need to be found, but if people want to find me also, you can just Google Jason Muth, M-U-T-H, or you could email me. If you want to be on this podcast, you can email me directly, jason@nexthometitletown.com, and we'll get you set up with getting on the calendar. So Matt, thank you. This is great. I really appreciate your being here. I wish you the best of success and the most of success, and I can't wait to hear about the next story that you have for us.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason.
All right.
Matt.
Thank you.
This has been the Real Estate Law Podcast. Because real estate is more than just pretty pictures, and law goes well beyond the paperwork and courtroom arguments. We're powered by Next Home Titletown, Greater Boston's progressive real estate brokerage. More at nexthometitletown.com. And Urban Village Legal, Massachusetts Real Estate Counsel, serving savvy property owners, lenders, and investors. More at urbanvillagelegal.com. Today's conversation was not legal advice, but we hope you found it entertaining and informative. Discover more at realestatelawpodcast.com. Thank you for listening.